Good morning, everybody. I'm getting ready to get started. I'm just trying to get the screen set up correctly so y'all can see my screen and hear me. So bear with me.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Well.
Good.
Mike, how's it going?
Hi, all. How are y'all doing? Can everybody hear me okay?
Hey, yes.
Perfect. I wanted to try to do it kind of this way, and I will make sure I put this presentation in the group as well, but I just kind of wanted it to be interactive. I'll be doing, talking about how to navigate doing a custom built home, but there's a lot of things I'm going to talk about that I feel like y'all might have questions, or if there's terms that you've not heard of before, please feel free to just, raise your hand or ask questions as I go. Like I said, I will put this presentation in the group as well, but like I said, I wanted it to be kind of interactive. I've got a few more I'm letting in, and then yeah, we'll get started. Let me shut this door. So has anyone ever helped somebody build a custom home? Yeah, from like starting with a custom home builder and somebody comes to you and says, I want to custom build my house. Has anybody done one of those before?
I have.
Jennifer, what was your experience like?
It's great. I think it's a lot of fun. My clients went from picking out the lot, picking out the builder. They designed like a truly Pinterest, idea board type of home. So I loved it. I mean, I wish all my buyers would custom design their homes. I think they're one of a kind.
Yeah, well, I'll give you guys a little bit of background on me. I'm April Stevens, for those that have not had a chance to meet yet. I actually got started in real estate working for a custom home builder. I was his office manager and loved everything that had to do with the home building process. So I quickly jumped in and started picking plans. I would take them to permitting, and literally, like I said, concept to closing. We would do spec homes and custom homes. And after about a year as his office manager, he, I told him I loved it. So he sent me to real estate school, and I worked in-house for him for about 2 years, just before 2009 and the recession hit. So again, I feel like I learned a lot working with him. I learned, why builders do things that they do, and how important it is to know what questions to ask. And that's a lot of what this presentation is going to be. I deal with agents all the time because we do represent about 7 different custom home builders that, one of the first questions we always hear is, well, what's the base price of this home? Well, when you're dealing with a custom home builder, there's really no such thing as a base price for the most part. It's very different than working with production builders. So that is something to keep in mind if you are, like I said, looking at representing a buyer and you go into a neighborhood. Sorry, we have more people jumping on. Reminder to mute when you come in. I don't know how to do that. I can mute everybody for right now. There we go. Got it. So it's important that when you are representing a buyer who's looking at building a custom home, that you know what questions to ask. So I'm going to kind of jump in and get started. If anybody has any questions, like I said, bear with me. I'm trying to let people in as they come, but please feel free to ask questions. And I'm going to kind of flip back and forth between just conversation and the presentation. So again, I'll put this presentation in the Freedom Builders group. So knowledge is power when representing a buyer. One of the most important things is knowing your buyer's financial situation. A lot of agents don't realize that lending for custom homes is very different than if you just have a buyer who's looking to get a mortgage. And a lot of buyers don't realize that. So it's our job to make them aware that there's typically going to be some out-of-pocket, non-refundable deposits that will need to be paid up front. Most lenders do not lend, like FHA, VA, they're not doing 97 to 100% financing on a custom home. And again, there's no one way to do this. So that's why it's important to figure out what kind of path you're going to go down with this buyer, and which way makes the most sense for them. So just some examples. Do they have cash available for a deposit? What is their total budget? And what type of loan are they pre-approved for? So I've had a lot of buyers in the past come and they say, we're approved for USDA, we want to custom build a home. Well, if the builder is, requiring a 5 to 10% deposit and they're looking at doing 100% financing, that's not something that's really going to be an option. And one of the things, one of the reasons I asked, what is your total budget? You typically want a buyer's land budget to be 20 to 25% of their total home budget. So a lot of people come to me and they've said, hey, we want to buy 10 acres of land and this 10-acre tract is $150,000. And I say, what's your budget? And they say 300. It's going to be really hard to build a $150,000 house on a $150,000 piece of property. It's going to be even harder to find a loan for that. Now, there are programs, but it's just questions you need to be aware of. Most lending institutions, if a property is over 10 acres, consider that to be very land heavy, and they're going to require more money down from the buyer. There are a couple different ways to finance a custom build. And you may, this is one of the things you need to be aware of, so that when you're interviewing or helping your buyer interview builders, if they don't already have one, is figuring out how they price their homes. So some builders do what is called a cost plus, where they will literally piece the house together based on what the buyer wants, create budgets, and then put their fee on top of it. And that's considered, a cost plus build. There are, and then the actual cost to build the home includes the builder's fee. There's what's called construction to perm. We're seeing a lot more of this, and a lot more of our local lenders are rolling out these programs. And I have found them to be very good to work with. It helps give a little bit more in control, and it's less liability for the builder. That if something were to happen, that this builder is now going to be stuck with a custom home that they have built for someone. So I have a couple resources for some good construction to perm programs that I will also put in the Freedom Builders group. So construction to perm essentially means the buyer is getting the financing through a bank, and the builder is getting payments or draws during the construction. And this is happening at certain milestones. Again, if you're working with a new builder who has not done a construction to perm loan before, it's important that you have a conversation with the builder and the buyer's lender, in my opinion, so that they understand how the draw schedule is going to work, because they're not all the same. And then the other way we've seen is builder financing. So there are situations if you're looking to work with a builder who's already got lots in an established subdivision. A lot of times they will custom build in that subdivision. They'll take down the lot and kind of give you an all-in price at the end of the day. And what we typically see, obviously everything is negotiable, but a lot of times they want, 5%, 5 to 10% down of non-refundable money if they are taking on the risk that they are now building this house for somebody to their specifications, and the builder. Any questions so far? I know this is probably the most boring part of this presentation is the financing, but it is, in my opinion, one of the most important parts, because like I said, we meet with people all the time that want to custom build, and they assume they can just go get a regular mortgage. And most of your construction loans or construction to perm are going to require 20 to 25% down. I know prime lending did have a 90% construction to perm, but unfortunately since COVID, they have pulled that back to be a 75-25. But I do anticipate they'll bring that back. So again, it's a good question to ask your favorite lenders what kind of construction to perm program they have. And not only that, but how long is their rate lock for? If you figure a lot of our construction processes are now taking 6 to 9 months, you want to make sure that your buyers can lock in fairly early. And most of them do have a 6-month lock, and then they'll do one float down. So any questions on any of that so far?
April, it's Kathy. I was wondering, can you just repeat for me what you said about the percentage of what the land should be of the overall cost?
20 to 25% is a healthy value for your land to be as a part of the total build cost.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So like I said, unfortunately, we see a lot of people who, want to build a $250,000 house, but they're looking at $80,000 lots. And that's going to make it very hard for any lending institution to justify.
And April, with the construction to perm loan, because that was one of the ways that my buyers for this home were exploring. They wouldn't actually close on the house until the construction is completed, right? Or do they actually close on the loan beforehand once they get it locked down to capping the interest rate, I guess?
So technically it depends on the lender, but it can be all of the above. My very first custom build construction to perm loan, we did a closing in the beginning at the closing of the construction loan, and I actually got my commission check right then. For the record, I would not recommend that because from then forward, my buyers were like, well, you've already been paid, so right. Every time, I couldn't make something happen as fast as they wanted to. I would much prefer to get paid at the end, although that was nice in the beginning, it kind of set a different tone for the transaction, but some do a one-time close and it's just at the beginning, and then at CO, then typically with that last draw, and I've done this as well, with the last draw is what is actually calculated, and they give the builder their final payment and then they pay your commission out of that. So it just depends on what the lender, how their construction to perm is worked. Sometimes there's one close at the beginning, there can be a one close at the end, or there can be two separate closings.
And if there are two separate closings, what would they be for? Or how?
So the one I did with 2 separate closings, we had the initial closing for my buyers where they took out the construction loan. And then the very end was just the process of, recording the deed and then dispersing the draws. But there weren't 2 different sets of closing costs, if that makes sense. So it closed with the attorney on the actual loan and recording the note. And then, but that's not one my buyer and I went to. We only went to the last one, which was, okay, we have the CO. Here's the final draw. Here's where they signed, an ALTA, and the seller signed the deed over to them. And then everybody got final payment.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so another issue we see a lot is which comes first, to find a house plan or to find a lot. So, and this varies depending on what kind of buyer you're working with. But you need to have a basic understanding of the type of home that your client would like to build, as some designs will have specific needs. So if you are starting with we represent a couple of new construction communities. So if somebody comes out and they say, I want to build a house in this neighborhood, well, then the first thing we say is, which lot is your favorite? Because if you represent multiple builders in that community, like for us, we want to start with a lot, and that's who that person's going to work for. However, if they've come to us through, they've seen some of our marketing for another builder, or they've seen a builder's marketing, and they want to specifically work with that builder, then we help them find a lot that the builder can obtain or one that he already has. But some things to keep in mind if you have a buyer that comes to you with a floor plan. So for instance, right now we are doing a lot of ranch plans, or what I call ranch plus. Everything is on the first floor except they have an unfinished second floor, or they've just got a bonus room on the second floor. That's going to be a fairly wide footprint for that plan. So if you're looking at a lot, you need to ensure that the width of the lot is going to work for the width of the house. And again, not all of this is always on your shoulders, but these are such great questions to ask if you're working with a buyer who says, I want to custom build a home. Okay, great. Do you know where, and do you know what, and do you know who? Those are kind of the 3 questions. And if they have one of those, then you can work on the other 2. Of course, if your buyer has a 2-story plan, you can offer more flexibility and fit those on smaller lots. Things to consider if your buyer is dead set on having a front entry garage, you probably want to stay away from cul-de-sac lots because they start very narrow and it's hard to get that width on the front of the lot. And then, with the lot location, regarding setbacks, things like that are very important. So again, it's important to know what your buyer's looking for. If they haven't, we get a lot of calls right now of people who, I'm looking to build a custom house on 3 to 5 acres. And so our first job is to find them land. And while we're in the process of finding them land, we are also going ahead and having the conversations of, okay, what do you want to build? Do you know the style that you want to build? And I'll talk about it on the next slide. You want to make sure that you're putting them with a builder who is in their wheelhouse of what they want to build. If you've got somebody who wants a custom, farmhouse, then you're probably not going to put them with a builder who specializes in traditional all brick homes, and vice versa. If they want a traditional all brick home, you don't want to look at one of the builders that pretty much just does all vinyl siding craftsman style. Not to say that they can't get out of their comfort zones or their niche, but a lot of them develop that for a reason and they're very good at it. Any questions so far, or has anybody had any issues, trying to figure out which comes first, the house plan or the lot or the builder? All right, we'll move on. So finding the dirt, like I just said, if you're also part of the land search, there's several things to consider. Existence of covenants or deed restrictions. I just sold a lot beside my personal house that my neighbors owned, and where we're at, we're on large chunks of land, but when they bought this land and subdivided it, they decided that, you know, because we all kind of had custom homes very similar in size, they didn't want somebody to just be able to buy this lot and put a modular home or a double wide on it. They didn't want somebody to come in and build a 1,200 square foot starter home. So they put deed restrictions on the property that had a minimum square footage and what they wanted the exterior of the home to be made of. So I had to make sure I included that on my marketing of that lot. And just so you know, the same person who put those deed restrictions on can take them off, even though they're recorded. We ended up having somebody who came in with a house plan that was, you know, 200 square feet smaller than what our deed restriction was. And we got them to do a variance, and we just recorded that with the closing of the lot, that part of the deed restriction was gone. Impervious surface restrictions, if a lot is within a subdivision. So this is something we are dealing with a lot right now in Johnston County. It's important to know what the impervious area is in a community, especially like we're working on a pre-sale now where we know the buyer wants a pool. We know the buyer wants an additional 2-car detached garage. And then they also want a footprint of a house. The floor plan they have picked out is like 60 by 60. So if we've only got 4,000 to 5,000 square feet worth of impervious surface, something's got to give. He's not going to be able to get the pool and the garage and the footprint of the house. We're going to have to either make the footprint smaller. We're going to have to find ways to get, you know, or to change the impervious, which you can do. There's certain types of, it's not concrete, but they're permeable surfaces you can use on additional structures that do not count towards your impervious. So I've seen a lot of issues where somebody knew they wanted something. Reminder to mute if you're not already, please. Where somebody wanted something and their agent didn't ask the right questions. And so then they moved in and realized, well, we can't put in the additional parking pad that we wanted, or now we can't put in a pool. I had an issue in a community last year where I knew they wanted to do a big outdoor grilling area. And for this reason, you need to make sure on all new construction, you're getting surveys, because the county is not checking the impervious when they should be, and sometimes they are, but they're not always checking the impervious when the builder submits the building plans to ensure that they are within the restrictions. I just helped a buyer build a custom home earlier this year, and I had it surveyed for this reason, and sure enough, they were 25% over their impervious. So, and I knew that they also wanted to add a parking pad and things like that. So now we're trying to negotiate with the developer to give us more impervious on that particular lot, which can be done. And that's what I did with a couple who also wanted an outdoor area. When we had a survey done, we found out they only had, I think it was like 112 feet left of impervious. That was not going to be enough for the outdoor area that they wanted. So again, just knowing to ask these questions is going to help to make sure you're protecting your buyers as much as possible, and your builders. You know, people assume that the builders are automatically doing these calculations and figuring this up, and that's not always necessarily the case. So you may have any questions on impervious before I move on. I know that's something that, like I said, it's really starting to be enforced heavily in Johnston County. Wake County, it's always been pretty strict, but in Johnston County, they're really starting to enforce it more so than ever.
April, so when you're saying that you're negotiating with the builder to give you more impervious land, I guess, or surface, does that mean that they're going to necessarily give you more land or change the outline of what they have already?
So in both of these developments, luckily there were still lots available that had not been built on. So the developer was able to take, especially on a lot that was much larger, like 200, because consider impervious as an allotment of land that you can permeate. So he just took 200 square feet from another lot, but not physically, just what's the word I just used? The option.
Allotment.
The allotment. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. 200 more square feet of the allotment from one lot and gave it to our lot.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
So they, you know, it's not always the case, but, you know, I brought it up and I was I was told yes. So we got it done twice this year. I mean, there's other things you can do. You can talk to environmental, and they can give you can do rain gardens. There's some other things you can do to improve the impervious area on a property as well. So one of the other things to look into are utilities. And keep in mind, just because there is power to a house next door or there's county water to a house next door does not necessarily mean that the lot beside it is going to have that. So it's something to also look into. And, on GIS, you can search where the water and sewer lines are to see if it actually runs there. And natural gas is another one of those. A lot of people assume when they see gas that there's natural gas. If you get out in most of your, rural areas, you can assume there's not going to be any type of natural gas out there. And then if they're looking for a piece of land, you've got 7 acres right now for sale. And one of the things is, does it perk? And by perk, it means it's already been tested to ensure that a septic system will work on that property, because you have to have certain soils for a septic system to work. It doesn't matter how big it is. I have 6 acres of vacant land at my house, and we can't get a perk site on it because the soils are not suitable to handle the septic system. So the same thing for a septic and well, you would want to help them facilitate getting those perk tests done. If you're selling land, I'm starting to tell more and more of my sellers, let's go ahead and have an engineer or environmental person come out and check it, because so many of our departments are backed up now. It's easier to just get it closed. So, right now to get a septic permit, they're 9 to 13 weeks out. You don't want to drag a property out that long to find out that it doesn't perk. So you can hire a private environmental health specialist, and they will check that for you. And then you can have that as a part of your marketing, that it does perk. And just so you know, it does perk. There are certain sites that will only perk for 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms. So if your buyer wants to build this, compound of, 1 house for them and 1 house for the mother-in-law, then you're going to need to ask the questions of how many perk sites do we have and what is the soil suitability. But yeah, like I said, the easiest way to determine the soil suitability is to use a soil scientist. The county is delayed. I jumped ahead of my own thing. And then a well drilling company can help determine the suitability for a well. We're definitely not seeing as many wells anymore, just because, the counties and the towns are running county water a lot more places. But, in your more rural areas, you can expect to see a lot more septic tanks. And there's just a lot more that goes into building a house on a septic. Not in a bad way. It's what we're used to. So, any other questions on that right now before I move on? Okay. So another thing to keep in mind is, what type of buyer is your client? So I'm going to show you this screen because I have dealt with both of these. So we have some buyers who, when you sit down with them, and I just, you kind of use this as a silly example, but I need to know the exact angle in which the accent wall will be framed. You've got your engineer brain people who are here, and they're going to want to know everything about every piece of the process and why. And then you have other people who all they want to do is look on Pinterest and show them to the design center. They just want to design it, and that's it. So it's important to know which kind of buyer you're working with that wants to build, because if you've got one of these engineer brain type people, do not put them with an unorganized builder, because it is going to drive you insane. They are going to go by the house every 2 days and tell you everything that they have found that is wrong. And it's going to drive the builder crazy. It's also one of the first things I tell my buyers, and most of the time they don't listen, but at least you set the expectation, is please don't go by the house every day. You're going to drive yourself insane. So many times you're going to catch things and you're going to think, oh, well, the builder didn't do this. Well, no, the builder probably already knows about it, but he hasn't, the sub hasn't fixed it yet. So I try to tell them and to keep from driving themselves crazy. Try not to visit the site every day. And, try to schedule walkthroughs at certain stages so they feel like they're getting their questions answered. I love to do a framing walkthrough, you know, and if you go ahead and set these people up in the beginning, hey, let's not do a walkthrough until this stage, because that's when we're going to be able to move this, change this, and ask these questions. Otherwise, they may be out there every other day going, can we move this wall? Why is this here? This piece of wood is split. This is this. Okay, we'll handle all of this at one time. And this is to make your life and the builder's life easier as well. And I feel like you can, I don't mean to say unorganized builders as much as builders that don't have as much attention to detail. And that doesn't mean they're bad at all. Some builders, you know, their joy is in just construction and building the house, and they hate the paperwork side of it, and they hate the budgeting and accounting side of it. But that kind of builder is going to drive your engineer brain person crazy, because when they ask for, why is this like this? And how about this? You know, this builder's like, well, I just build houses for a living. But then, you know, your buyers who are very much into design aspect of it, you want to put them with a builder who gets excited about helping them design as well. Not all builders have design center, you know, that's definitely more of your production people, but you know, you want to try to reel your people in from the beginning. One of the things I like to do is start a Pinterest board with my buyers when we start a custom build, because they're giving you their ideas without sending you 7,000 emails. And you want to go ahead and rein in their ideas while you're in the beginning stages, because if you have one of those clients, me personally, I'm a person that's like, give me 3 options. Do not show me the entire showroom. I want you to show me what's in my budget and give me 3 options. Otherwise, it can be very overwhelming. But if you've got one of those very creative, you know, Pinterest loving buyers, you want them to feel like they have a creative outlet throughout the build, but it needs to be an organized creative outlet. So that's why I really like the Pinterest boards, because then when they go to make their selections, they've already been looking at things for about 2 to 3 months and should have by then narrowed down what they want when it's actually time to make those selections. Because that's something buyers need to understand as well. Time is money in new construction. And you know, there may be situations, and I've seen this happen a lot, where the builder says, okay, we've got the subfloor in now. I need you to go pick out your flooring and your carpet next week. And if this builder hasn't, if this buyer hasn't even decided if they want LVP or hardwoods, you got a long ways to go. And they need to have already kind of researched this and figured out what their preferences are. So that's why I feel like that's a good way to keep them involved in the design part without it being overwhelming to you or the builder. Does anybody have any questions on that, or anything to add, or experiences they've had where you kind of had to keep people on track or rein them in? Like I said, I've got one now where I have got engineer brain people, and I've got a very unorganized builder. And I even told them when they chose this builder, I said, I've worked with this builder before. He's not very detail oriented, and I'm going to go ahead and prepare you. He's going to drive us crazy when it gets down to the details and the nitty gritty. And sure enough, there are 11 emails a day flying of, this is our current working list. So a lot of times what I do in that situation is just start a Google Doc that once I know the builder has taken care of something, I can strike through it. Because these are the kind of people, no matter what I say, they're going to go to that job site every day. They're going to find, they're doing what I would consider a blue tape walk every day when they go out there and the house isn't even finished. And I have begged them to stop, but again, engineer brain person needs to check this stuff off every day. So for that reason, I use a working document like a Google Doc so that they can add to it from their phone, the builder sees it, and then we can strike through it as things get taken care of. So they feel like it's being addressed. And then we also, don't have a lot of stuff at the end of the build that we're now having to go back and figure out and point out. I also do that as a part of our contract process. Well, I'll get into that. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Anybody have any questions so far? So helping your buyer select a builder. That was the preamble to this. Another thing that is very important is, like I said, the geographic area. of where your buyers want to build and then the style of home they want to build. It makes more sense to deal with a local builder that is, you know, familiar with the area, familiar with what the codes are in that county, what the building inspectors are looking for. I did one pre-sale and it was in Hillsboro, and it was about an hour and 10 minutes for myself and the builder. And that was very hard to manage. It was hard to manage for myself representing the builder and the buyers, because the buyers lived there. So they were there every day. Whereas the builder, it was much harder for him to get there and was more dependent on the subs being there. But again, they had been attracted to his style. So that's why we ended up, you know, with a pre-sale an hour and a half away, just about, which at the end of the day, it worked good, but it was all about managing expectations, setting up those walkthroughs, again, so that they felt like things were being taken care of in a timely manner. And if your people have an idea, if they already have a house plan and, you know, they love this style, then I would kind of start there and say, okay, well, I've seen these 3 builders build this style house within a 30-mile or 30-minute radius of where you guys are hoping to end up. So let's start there. If you don't already have some builder relationships, you know, a lot of your good builders have some really elaborate Facebook pages where they're putting, you know, posts of what they do and the type of homes they build, and then check out their websites. And in this document, I've also provided a link that you can help your buyers research by going to the North Carolina Home Builders Association website, and that's going to show you their license status. Not all builders are licensed the same way. There are different levels of their licenses. And then I would always ask for references from the builder's past clients, because a lot of times they'll tell you, I mean, they're not just going to fluff you. I mean, I've had people say, you know, he built a fantastic house, but you need to make sure you check on this, this, and this. You know, just like the builder I'm working with right now, I've done multiple pre-sales with him. So I knew exactly what to tell these people to anticipate. And I knew how to kind of to head it off at the pass. I knew to document everything and to make sure everything was in writing, so that there's no questions at the end of the day of, was this included, or you didn't tell us we needed to ask for this. Those conversations that can really damage the building relationship. So again, setting expectations. We have a pre-sale now where we were starting on, we sold the land, I should say, and we had a pre-sale conversation. And it was one of those situations where the buyer's budget is $300, but the land he's buying is around $90,000. Now that's not terrible as far as our ratios go, but it's going to be really hard. And once we got into the lending thing, that's again where we found that he was going to need more money down than anticipated. And I met him, I connected him with one of our local custom home builders who does some smaller product, who is very reasonable. You know, he's not a, you know, all brick custom home builder. He does vinyl, he does hardy plank, he does a little bit of everything. I felt like this was a good match. But when it came down to it, the buyer wants as much square footage for as cheap as possible. He needs to get he's got you know, 2 kids and his dad moving in with him. And so once we got further down in our conversations, I realized, you know, my builder that I have matched him with is not going to want to put in laminate floors. He's not going to want, he doesn't build that product by trade. He's a true custom builder. And if this buyer wants just sprawling, cheap square footage, we need to go in a different direction, because we've got a tight budget that we're working in. And so we ended up, you know, kind of steering him towards more of a production style builder who can just slap some inexpensive square footage, put some square footage on the ground. But it never fails. One of the first questions buyers ask is, you know, so how much is your price per square foot? How much is your base per square foot, price per square foot? And some builders can somewhat answer that. I've got one subdivision, it's, you know, 14 houses. It's the same builder out there. We're building plans in the same square footage range. They all have very similar features. And we know, because we're building specs and pre-sales out there, that we're starting around 140 a square foot. So that is one of those situations where if a buyer's agent comes to me and they say, you know, what's your base price out there? I send them to the builder's website and said, what's your buyer's favorite plan? And then I kind of give them a base price based on what our starting price per square foot is. And then we set up a separate meeting where I go through what are the important features you're looking for. And that's when they start telling you, oh, I want an additional 2-car detached garage. I want a chef's kitchen with double ovens, or I don't want any carpet throughout the home. And so then you're able to kind of piece together the items that you need to have the builder price for them to actually come to a true asking price. But again, it's important that you get all these pieces together, because if not, at the end of the day, your buyers are going to be upset when things aren't in their allowance because the builder didn't know that they wanted to increase their appliance package. You know, if I know that somebody wants double ovens and they're going to want a drawer microwave and they want to include their refrigerator, I need to build all this into the contract. Otherwise, if the builder's, you know, base appliance allowance is $1,500 and they're going to go to Ferguson or Garner TV and Appliance and their bill is $6,000 because, you know, they wanted to upgrade everything. Those are the bigger ticket items I think are important to know right off the bat, so that you can allow for those things. Any questions so far? So there are some builders who can quote you kind of like an average price per square foot. But if your people are looking to build a true custom home, I recommend kind of having a good buyer consultation with them of what do you envision? Because, you know, a lot of times you want the builder to price just about everything they want and then let them decide what to back out. There are some things that are, you can spend inexpensive, you could do inexpensively now that are easy to replace later, such as light fixtures. I mean, light fixtures, the styles change so fast. You know, I've seen people have $6,000 lighting budgets. And I'm like, that's crazy. You're going to get tired of that $2,000 chandelier in about 5 years. Or you can decide to pay for it separately once you get all the pieces put together. But, you know, your cabinetry, your flooring, those are things that are really hard to change out later. So you want to make sure that they are pretty solid on what they're choosing. And I tend to stay in neutral land. I tell them it's an occupational hazard for me that I try to stay neutral because, you know, the styles change so often. But it's just something to kind of, you know, put in the back of their mind as well. But when talking to the builder, you want to have, some builders will give a breakout of all the allowances. Some builders, you know, the main items like your cabinetry, you know, you're not typically going to get a breakout of the framing package. Now, if you're dealing with a builder who's a cost plus builder, then you should see literally every cost and what that's going to be so that you know exactly what everything ends up at, and then it's just the builder's price on top of it. But most builders will give you a schedule of allowances on your big things like appliances, cabinets, lighting, flooring. Because if you know you want this special custom tile that's, you know, $5 or $8 a square foot, that's probably not in a builder's typical budget. And then another question you want to ask is, you know, a lot of times what we do is base price plus upgrades. And so you want to ask, how does the builder handle these upgrades? I have seen it done a lot of ways. I will tell you, I do not recommend letting all the upgrades be built in. I have seen that where the builder waited until the end to collect the upgrades, and when nobody was really keeping an eye on it, these buyers went about $60,000 over in upgrades, and then A, didn't want to pay it, B, the house didn't appraise because of the upgrades, and they wanted to renegotiate the price. So I would never recommend that. I think, you know, most builders either do half of the upgrade up front, or they require anything above the allowance to be paid out of pocket straight to the vendor. And I will say, for your buyers and your own protection, I feel like that's the easiest way to do it, because it's kind of like when they've spent that money, it's out of sight, out of mind. So if there is an appraisal issue, which does happen a lot in custom homes, then it's easier to swallow. It's not like, okay, we still owe $30,000 and now the house came in $40,000 or $50,000 low. So that's something else to prepare your buyers for, is a lot of times there are issues with custom homes appraising because there's so many items they have put in there that were worth the money to them that an appraiser is not going to give the full value for. So it's just another expectation I like to set to the buyers, like, don't freak out over this. You know, this may happen. And that's another reason to know what their budget is and what their reserves are, to make sure, they have the money to do the upgrades they may want to do out of pocket, and to make sure that they are taking those things into consideration.
April, so on a custom build, if the house doesn't appraise, I haven't had that situation happen yet, I'm knock on wood, but if that was the case, then do they have, it's the same situation where they would have to bring the difference in cash?
9 times out of 10, yes. I have been able to negotiate with a buyer, with a builder for one of mine that did not appraise. And I'll be honest, my leverage was that the agent that he was using to put in his other comps did not put it in MLS correctly. And so I knew that they didn't, what the contract really was with the upgrades, and the buyers had paid some things out of pocket. I was able to go back to him and say, because you didn't have this done correctly, it's negatively impacting my buyers. And so he agreed to split the difference. But I would not expect that. I would expect that your buyers would have to bring the difference, because again, it's not a spec home, it's a custom home, and what was put in that house was, what it costs to put it in that house, and you just don't always get full value for that.
Thank you.
So I've had that happen quite a few times with custom homes, and that's why, like I said, it's important that if you're putting a pre-sale in MLS, like we try to put all our pre-sales in MLS, obviously we want the tracking for MLS purposes, but also, custom homes help the comps in a neighborhood. And it kills me to see agents put for comp purposes only, and that's it. That's all the information you have. You have cut sheet, you have square footage, and you have a price. So we try to be a little more thoughtful, helping the appraisers out. We let them know what's in it, in the agent only remarks, I'll put, buyers upgraded, their appliances, buyers, added this. I said the appraisers can take that into consideration when they're doing comps in that neighborhood. And like I said, most builders really appreciate you doing that. Any other questions? How do you handle y'all's conversations? Because like I said, we're getting a lot more calls lately where people are calling on land. A lot of people want to build with the market the way it's been, and due to COVID, they don't want to be stuck in a subdivision anymore. They kind of want to be out on sprawling land. So for instance, I had the call yesterday on a piece of property, and he wants to build a custom home for him and his son. And so what we did is we're going to start them on a land search. And in the meantime, like I said, start having the conversation with them of what kind of home do you want to build? What is your budget? What is most important? Because, a lot of people on land are, they want to build shops and large garages. They probably have equipment and things like that. Those are also things to take into consideration with their financing, because those do not get nearly as much value as it costs to build them. I did a pre-sale end of last year, and it was in a subdivision, and the husband wanted this maxed out detached garage. It was finished. It had an attic pull down. It had an extra panel for his welding equipment. This garage cost $32,000 to build. We priced it up front. That was the builder's cost on it. And the appraiser gave it $8,000 worth of value. And because I knew that was going to be the case, because there were no other garages like this in that neighborhood, I made sure the deposit that those buyers put up with my builder was at least the cost of that garage. Because if something was to fall through, my builder was going to be stuck with that house, and there's no way I could get $32,000 worth of value if it was a spec home. So if you're representing custom builders, that's something to consider on the flip side as well. And if you're representing buyers, be prepared if they're asking for something custom like that they need to have the money to make a larger deposit or put down on it. One thing I didn't talk about, going back to the beginning, sometimes when you're doing the construction to perm loan, or the builder is getting the loan, they will use the lot as collateral. So I have seen that as well. It may reduce the down payment that is required if the buyer signs the lot over to the builder, and then the builder starts building the house on that lot. Then usually that will reduce the amount of the down payment required if the lot is owned free and clear, because it's considered collateral. So if something were to happen and the buyer couldn't close, as a part of the deposit, this builder now owns this piece of land, this property, or this lot. Any other questions?
April, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm bombarding you with questions.
No, I love it. That's what I'm here for.
And, I feel that with custom builder, there is such a gray area, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have had calls where people are saying, I found this lot and I want to buy it, and then I want to custom build on it, right? So my question to you is, how does, what's the best way in order to, I guess, redirect them to talk to a lender in order, like, do they need to just go ahead and buy the lot outright and then get the financing in place to build the house? Or should they be considering doing the loan for both and put it into one, I guess, umbrella?
It depends on their financial situation and the property. Like I said, if it's a large piece of land, it's going to be harder for a bank to lend on that with a construction to perm. But I would say that's your first question to them is, okay, so what are we trying to accomplish? And let's go ahead and talk to a lender and find out which one is best for you. You know, if it's a $25,000 piece of property and they have the cash, they're probably better off to just go ahead and buy it outright versus, you know, rolling it into the loan. But at the same time, you know, depending on the construction to perm program, it may greatly reduce how much they have to put down on the build because they'll have that as collateral. So I think that's your first reason for getting them to talk to a lender, is to say, let's figure out which option makes the most sense for you. Whether you should just let, you know, you should roll it into the loan and identify a builder, or just buy it outright. When you do the construction to perm loan, the lender is going to want to know who the builder is. They're going to want to know the plans and specs. They're going to want to see everything that is planned to be done. So if the person's like, I found this lot and I want to build in the next year or two, well, then just go ahead and buy the lot outright, because you don't have everything lined up. But if they're starting the process and you feel like you can get them lined up with a builder fairly quickly, or they already know the builder that they want to work with, then I feel like a construction to perm loan is a great program.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think the biggest thing, you know, the biggest thing I see representing builders is agents that come and they don't know what questions they should have asked their buyer before they get to me. So with my builders, before they ever even meet with a client, I've gotten the 90% of the questions answered that I know we're going to need to price a house. So for instance, I've got one, we've already had that meeting. I've explained it to them. I've given them the pricing and I've broken it down. And the agent emailed last week and she said, okay, well, when do you need to know about the garage? Because they can't decide if they want to do a 1-car or a 2-car garage. And I said, well, if they're going to do the 2-car garage, we're going to have that re-engineered, and we're going to have to, you know, go back to permitting. So that's going to change a lot. And we need to know that before we can move forward. So then she called again this week and she said, okay, we're ready to go to contract. What do we need to do? We can decide the rest of the stuff later. And I said, I can't write a contract without knowing, you know, if we're going to do a separate contract for a detached garage, then maybe. But if we're still on the fence of what this is going to be, I don't want to write a contract, because typically this is something of note. I need to add this in the presentation for you guys. So typically when you write a contract on a new construction home, you want to include and have the buyers and the builder sign off on a cut sheet as the exhibit, or as an exhibit A. I always attach the floor plan or the cut sheet. And I like to go as far as going ahead and, visibly walking through the floor plan with the buyers and explaining, okay, in these rooms, do you want carpet? Do you want hardwoods? Or if I'm representing the builder, I'm going, okay, in this room, standard is hardwood, standard in this room is tile or LVP, whatever their standard is. Do you want something different? And we can go ahead and notate that and start having the builder price it that way. I can't stress enough that the more information you have up front, the more it's going to save you in the long run. I have done pre-sales for buyers where we get down to it and they thought they were going to have a coffered ceiling in the dining room. They thought there was going to be a tray ceiling in the bedroom. And builders will a lot of times say, well, it wasn't on the plan. So if it's not on the plan, I don't owe it to you. And they'll say, well, I saw you built this house in this neighborhood and it had it. You can't just assume that because they did it one way, they're going to do it the same. And the builder's always going to refer back to, well, there weren't shutters on the plan, or there wasn't a patio or a deck here on the plan. So for that, I like to make sure that I walk through the floor plan with the buyers and notate, is there anything, that you would change about this? Like I said, just as much information as possible. And then I also like to do a working document that I attach as Exhibit B, notating if there are certain things or allowance items. Some builders will give you a schedule of allowances and you attach that to the contract. For me, if I know, with some of the other custom guys, okay, we made sure that we increased the price by this for extra concrete, by this for, we bumped up their appliance allowance. That way, when it comes down to it, we've got a record of how did we get to this pricing. So that's, like I said, one of the biggest things is making sure you attach that as a part of the contract. And then if you're representing a buyer, we see it a lot where we will tell somebody, oh yeah, this builder is good. Let's go talk to this builder. And if you don't have a relationship with this builder, you need to have the conversation with the builder about how you're being compensated. And what that compensation is. If it's not listed anywhere in MLS, you need to make sure you're clear on how it's being compensated and get a confirmation of compensation. The Real Estate Commission just put out a new form where it's almost like a builder referral form. And I'm so excited to see that. We have needed that for years, where I've told a buyer, oh yeah, if you're looking to build there, you should call this builder. And you don't know it, but they do call that builder. And then they set up an appointment with that builder. And then they go through the whole process with that builder. And at the end of the day, everybody's like, thanks so much. Oh no, what's happening on TV? Everybody's like, thanks so much. And you didn't get paid for it. And, they just they didn't not necessarily win around you on purpose. But if you don't have that conversation with the builder and make the builder aware that you are going to be representing these buyers on this build, they need to know if they're obligated to pay you and how they're obligated to pay you. Because that's something, I don't see it as much anymore, but when I would have buyers and they wanted to go build a custom home in a neighborhood where there was a marketing team, even if I found the builder, even if we found the lot, if there's a marketing team on that subdivision, typically the builder is then going to be responsible for paying the listing agent and the buyer's agent, even if it's a pre-sale. So these are just, like I said, I'm just trying to give y'all all, there's no one way to do this. I'm trying to give y'all all variables of what I have seen and how it's been done and, things to anticipate. Anybody have any other questions or thoughts or concerns? When you're trying to find a builder, if you haven't worked with many builders, I would say ask your fellow real estate agents around you that have. to figure out who they've used and if they've done a custom build with them. Like I said, I've got a great list of some that I've worked with both in Wake and Johnston County. And I can kind of tell you, you know, if they're looking to build this at this price point in this area, these 3 builders are going to be your best option. And here's what to expect from all 3 of them. So, or, you know, always feel free to reach out to the agents that have, you know, worked with them before. If their stuff is in MLS and you can see they built a custom home, I mean, I would want to kind of vet them for my clients, and always ask a builder, how do you like to handle things? They would prefer be asked than, you know, I get contracts all the time and I look and I'm like, we use our own contract. We don't use this builder doesn't use a standard offer of purchase. I wish you would have called and asked me this. I could have saved everybody a whole lot of time, effort, and energy. Or, you know, the builder always requires this down. If you just call and ask questions, 9 times out of 10, I feel like you're going to be doing a better service to your buyers. All right, we've officially hit 12 o'clock. Like I said, I'm gonna upload this presentation into the Freedom Builders group. But if you guys ever have any questions or, you know, wanna know how to navigate doing a custom home, like I said, I call it from concept to closing. I'm happy to help any way I can. And like I said, we've got some really good resources for land. If they're looking to do a land purchase, you know, we like Ag Carolina a lot. And then, you know, some other great references for the construction to perm loan. But like I said, the best thing you can do is inform your buyers and ask as many questions as you can to make sure you're kind of guiding them down the right path. But if there's no more questions, I'm gonna hop off. I really appreciate y'all joining.
Thank you, April.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye.